Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Of all the 10 Commandments, this is the only one that gets us to focus on the days of the week. Now, obviously, the days of the week have been categorized and put into a number of different forms throughout the ages, but the point here is that we are to be thinking about those 6 days of labor that are, in a way, precursors or predictors of what the quality and the enjoyment of the seventh day, the Sabbath, will be. So I want us to be thinking about those 6 days, because they do the 6 days of labor, because they have a lot to do with how meaningful the Sabbath becomes for us on the seventh day. Psalm 90 came to mind when I was thinking of this idea of the days of the week, 6 days of laboring. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. There is wisdom to be gained in spending time to think about how our work week has gone in preparation for the Sabbath. The Sabbath meaning rest. And really, in many ways, the thing that I'm wanting us to think about today is this thing that we call rest, which is just so incredibly important to us, especially as we get older. Rest. Because we can be so tired, and I'm not talking about being physically tired, I'm talking about mentally and emotionally tired. And it is the Lord who offers us his rest, his peace. And this is the promise of the seventh day. So the quality of our Sabbath day really is directly proportional to how things go during the 6 days of labor. But notice the wording here in this commandment. It begins with remember. Remember the Sabbath day. And so much could be said about this in the scriptures, how often there are these references to remembering. And quite frankly, it's because as human beings, we forget a lot. And again, I'm not talking about our natural memories, I'm talking about us forgetting the really, really important things in life. And how does that happen? It's not like we have a lack of information, a lack of knowledge. How on earth, literally on earth, can we forget? Well, in thinking of those 6 days leading up to our celebration of the Sabbath, the day of rest, I think we need to think about those days as being us on a spiritual battlefield. We really are on a spiritual battlefield. Now, there are lots of wonderful things that happen during the week, and we protect our routines and guard that routine very closely. We want to be able to be productive, useful, have lots of things happening. But we find out pretty quickly in the treatment of the teachings of our church on this commandment that this laboring for 6 days, has to do with combat, with spiritual combat. And that is the challenge, because we can be really challenged to the core as to our trust in the Lord, our trust in his providence, this lack of peace, all of these things. And that is because we are on a spiritual battlefield. Every day, every hour, the hells are trying to sabotage our good efforts. The hells are trying to separate us from God and from each other. And they are incessant. And so this labor is really against these hidden forces, these hidden spiritual forces. And as we work through this, I want you to think about who it is that gives us the rest that our soul so desperately seeks, the rest, the peace. More than happiness, more than success, more than anything, it's this peace, this rest that our soul craves. Keep it holy. Keep the Sabbath day holy. The Sabbath can be pretty normal, pretty uneventful, and for lots of people it may be a completely meaningless day. And it may come and go for us. We go through the motions. But what's involved in keeping it holy or making it holy? Well, in order to really understand this, we need to dig down to the deeper level and the deeper explanation that we're given in this commandment about the command and the prohibition against the Israelites, the ancient Israelites, to not do any kind of work, zero work. Basically, don't lift a finger. That was their command. And this was a command so that they understood that the Sabbath was a very different day from the rest of the days of the week, and that it was to be kept holy. So it was for that state of mind, for that mindset back then, you are not allowed to do anything. No work at all. Don't pick up sticks. Don't kindle a fire. Those are the specific prohibitions that we're given. And we see this conflict in the New Testament where the Lord starts to define, well, what kind of work are we talking about? And these prohibitions against the ancient Israelites were punishable by death. And our modern mind might say, does the punishment fit the crime? Death for picking up sticks on the Sabbath day? Death for kindling a fire? Well, on a deeper level, it represents the incredibly hard work that we are to stop doing during the 6 days of labor. That incredibly hard work is ego work, self-work, self-interest, which is a destroyer of any kind of relationship. It's a destroyer of marriages. It's a destroyer of relationships between our children, between co-workers, friends. That is the kind of labor that is so exhausting, and it's part of this spiritual battleground work that we may not even be aware of, but it explains why we can be so exhausted, because it's hard to do that kind of work, and the Lord is saying, don't do it. Just don't do that kind of work. And it's because, again, the work of hell. Notice how many times hell is mentioned in the explanation of this beautiful, the Sabbath. We're talking about the Sabbath. Why are we talking about hell? Well, we're talking about hell because evil spirits are really trying to sabotage the work that goes on leading to that Sabbath, that day of rest. They are trying to divide. They're trying to separate us from God, separate us from each other. And so you get this explanation that the 6 days of labor means battling the flesh and its cravings, and also against the evils and falsities that are in us from hell. And so that is the work, that is the 6 days of labor, but as I've used in the opening scripture sentence, the idea of what the Lord can do for us during the week. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy burdened, and I will give you the Sabbath. I will give you rest. And just think of how powerful that is to remember that each day leading up to the Sabbath. The Lord is the one who gives us rest. The Lord is the one that does the heavy lifting. The Lord is the one who we need to call in times of crisis, because we don't have the power. We don't have the power against evil. I love that teaching which I ended on. Those who are in a life of love or charity, which is one of the things that the Lord, in coming into the world, demonstrated, the healing on the Sabbath, which the hypocritical Pharisees and Sadducees were horrified at. What's he doing? He's helping and loving the neighbor. He's healing on the Sabbath. He's doing good on the Sabbath. Those who are in the life of love or charity make the Sabbath day holy, for nothing is sweeter to them than to worship the Lord and to give him the glory every day. Not just on Sunday, every day. So that's our task, that's one of our challenges, is to bring the Lord into your work week. And He will shift your focus and lighten your burden. So let's get to that Sabbath, meaning rest. On the deepest level, this commandment, we're told, refers to being joined to the Lord and having peace as a result, because we are then safe from hell. What an incredible thing. Just imagine being able to go through the week and not getting offended, not having your feelings hurt, realizing that it's not about me or you, and that this is about other people, loving other people, doing what we can, not caring about what we look like or how we come across, any of that. Just imagine what that's like to be separated from hell, which is really a way of defining peace. Is that possible? Well, it is an advanced state. I'm not going to pretend that in that reading it's talking about the celestial level of this commandment and the angels that are withheld the whole time from hell. But we do get glimpses of it, and this is the point. This is not an undoable thing. We get glimpses of this separation from hell. We say it in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come." And there is real power in this when, again, we call on the Lord during those 6 days of labor. There is growth, there is change, there is progress, there is peace, there is happiness, there is a sense of usefulness and contentment. None of these things being able to happen without the Lord. So how do we make the Sabbath day holy? In conclusion, I think we probably get pretty good at being able to take physical and mental rest. That is a relatively easy thing to do and to obtain. But a holy day of rest requires a different mindset and a different skill set. The first thing we need to do and remember is to stop working, is to take that commandment literally in terms of the work that we're talking about, the work of the ego, the work of self, which will never be satisfied, it will never be snuffed out. It's that fire that kindles and burns. And the hells will just feed into that the whole time, all during the week. And so when we recognize how powerful that kind of work is and how draining it is and how useless it is, doesn't actually get us anywhere, sort of like worrying, which if you by worrying can add 1 cubit to your stature. I struggle with that teaching so much, but it's true. The work that the Lord is prohibiting is the work of selfishness. And of course we're going to do selfish things. Of course we're going to take care of number one. That's really not the point. The point is to become aware of this and more invite the Lord into our work week. And so that is the second step, is to pay attention to your work week, your 6 days of labor, and realize that the Lord is there offering His help and His assistance. And which is why He says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." So let us, on this Sabbath day and on all Sabbath days, learn to give the glory to the Lord. Let us remember to give Him the power to change us. Let us remember to express gratitude on this day of rest. Gratitude for this amazing world, gratitude for the amazing people in our lives who are there to support us in our spiritual journey. Gratitude for the gift of life, for the gift of friendship, for the gift of family. As soon as you realize on the Sabbath day that this is a time of celebrating the people around us and celebrating the Lord, then in that way we make the Sabbath day holy. Amen.